The hostess smiled at me. Bright, professional right up until I said my last name. Lane, I told her. I'm with the Hale party. Her fingers paused above the iPad. The smile thinned, just barely. For the private dining room? Yes. She scanned the screen. Tapped. Scrolled. The way servers do when they're about to tell you no but want it to land soft. The bar behind me hummed with Friday night chatter. Someone laughed big at the end of a joke. Rain silvered the floor-to-ceiling windows along Fifth Avenue, and the city outside smeared into streaks of light. I'm not seeing a lane listed with the Hales, the hostess said. It's a prepaid event. Maybe the name is under someone else? I kept my voice steady. Morgan Hale, my mother-in-law, booked the room. She texted the family group the time. Of course, the hostess said. The kind of course people say when they can't help you. Her name tag read, Julia the Matre D in a sleek black dress, early 20s, doing her absolute best not to be the face of a problem. Let me grab my manager. Before Julia could move, a crisp voice cut across the lobby like a knife through paper. There you are. Morgan Hale, my mother-in-law, CEO, Aura in a winter white coat, approached with heels that sounded like decisions. A diamond cuff winked at her wrist. Her dark hair was smoothed into a perfect chignon that did not acknowledge humidity or mortal weather. Two women trailed her, both in metallic dresses, both scanning me the way you study calories on a label. Morgan didn't look at the hostess. She looked at me. You're late, Avery, she said, and apparently not on the list. I'm on time, I said. 7:55. Well, our table's at 8, Morgan answered, and I finalized the guest list. Julia? She aimed the smallest smile at the hostess, the kind that arrives with instructions. If she's not on it, she's not with us. Mrs. Hale, Julia said carefully. We can add her if... Number Morgan's eyes flicked, sharp. We have standards for our events. People say New Yorkers never stare. But the lobby shifted in that subtle way crowds do when they smell something about to be interesting. Daniel Hale, my husband, hovered a few steps behind his mother, jaw clenched, collar too tight, the dark blue suit I'd pressed this afternoon suddenly looking like it belonged to someone else. I caught his eye. Danny? He blinked, his gaze slid to the floor. This is not the time. Morgan took that as a cue to step closer. She smelled like expensive eucalyptus and hard boundaries. I worked very hard to put this evening together, she said to me. A private celebration for family. Immediate family. I'm your daughter-in-law, I said. Legally, she said, lifting a shoulder. But let's be realistic. This is a brand dinner, Hales only, people with value to add. Something settled inside my chest, the way snow falls and the world goes quieter but not softer. I felt the old instinct to apologize, to ask what would make this easier for her, to smooth the edges so nobody bled. My hand grazed the strap of my clutch. I pressed my thumb into the leather until I could feel the bone beneath it. Julia, Morgan continued, addressing the air, please ensure the champagne flutes are chilled in the private room. We have a Dame on ice and 2 bottles of Chateau Margaux for the course pairings. I paid for this experience. Yes, Mrs. Hale, Julia said. Her eyes darted to me, warm and worried. Miss Lane, we can seat you at the bar while we... The bar is fine, Morgan said, already turning away. It's where she belongs tonight. The 2 metallic dress cousins, Morgan's nieces, were openly watching now. One whispered, Is that Avery? The other's mouth tilted. I thought she wasn't coming. I could feel the heat lift off my skin, mortification trying to rise. I pinned it down with breath. I'll take a seat, I told Julia, because I wouldn't give Morgan the drama she paid to see. Of course, Julia said gently. Can I get you anything? Still sparkling? Club soda with lime, I said. Thanks. Daniel hadn't moved. I forced myself to look at him again. Say something, I said under my breath. He glanced past me at the room like the answer might be pinned to a wall. It's one dinner, Ave. Mom stressed. She just uninvited me to my own family dinner. His throat worked. Please don't make this bigger. A laugh. Somebody else's spiked behind me. And then a man at the bar murmured, Is that the Hale matriarch? She runs Horizon West, right? Another voice. Yeah, the venture group. They did that fancy launch last month. I took my club soda from Julia with a thank you and slid onto a bar stool. The glass beaded cold against my palm. I squeezed it until my fingers hurt and then loosened them, because I refused to stand here shaking like a glass myself. Morgan's party streamed past the host, stand toward the back where the private dining room waited. She did not look back. Daniel drifted with the current, carried by other people's certainty. At the last second, he glanced over his shoulder at me, then looked away like he'd been caught stealing. I breathed through my nose. The bar mirror threw me back at myself, dark hair down, the simple black dress I'd ironed smooth, a tiny nick at my collarbone from the necklace clasp, 34 and steady enough to know that control isn't volume. 34 and still learning where to put my anger so it does something useful. There's a line I could draw for you from that bar stool all the way back to a 2-stoplight town in Kansas. A girl making change at the cash register, counting quarters into a plastic tray, while men in feed caps called her sweetheart and asked if she planned to marry up. A high school counselor telling her state school was more her speed, because she'd fit better there. 100 small messages that you are only as big as what other people can see. But here's the thing I didn't say. There's a whole decade of my life Morgan doesn't know about. She's never asked. Is there anything else I can get you? Julia asked, soft at my elbow. This is perfect, I said. I added, none of this is on you. Her mouth tugged into something like relief. Thank you. She hesitated, then leaned closer. If you want me to check again. You've already done more than you should, I said, and meant it. Julia moved on. The bar returned to its hum. The flat screen above the bottles ran a basketball highlight reel with the sound off. A couple nearby debated the merits of oysters versus the poached pear salad. A woman in a cream sweater told her date she was sick of people saying it is what it is. I sipped club soda and counted backward from 5. 5. My shoulders dropped an inch. 4. I picked a point beyond the bar and looked through it. 3. I rolled my tongue against my back teeth so I wouldn't grind them. 2. I found the place under my left knee where a run in my tights snagged earlier and anchored there. 1. I let out air. Morgan reappeared. I felt her before I saw her. The hush that happens when people make space for power, even when it's petty. She approached with her purse tucked like a declaration and stopped beside my stool, eyes glittering with the fun of it. I spoke with the staff, she said. The room is set. It would be inappropriate to add anyone at this point. We have fixed plates and pairings. You understand. I understand you're choosing this, I said. She smiled. The problem, Avery, is that you don't understand how these things work. The optics. We are a public family. Daniel is a rising partner. We can't keep pretending. Pretending what? She tilted her head at me like I was furniture she might keep or list on Facebook Marketplace. That you belong in a room like this. I stared at her. A room? It's a restaurant. It's a network, she corrected. Horizon West isn't a hobby. We built something worth having. Daniel will inherit that responsibility. When we host with strategy. And I don't fit your strategy. If you worked, she said, perfectly pleasant, it might be different. But you've chosen a domestic role, which is fine for some women. It's just not guest of honor material. And it's certainly not brand forward. My laugh came out colder than the glass in my hand. I chose to take care of your son and your father when he was sick, Morgan. She flinched at that quick, involuntary, and then recovered so fast it might not have happened. You cooked, she said. Let's not inflate it. I managed hospice care schedules, I said. Insurance fights. Overnight meds. You were in Napa. It was Q4, she said, as if that were a sacrament. She smoothed a non-existent wrinkle at her wrist. Look, this isn't personal. It's 100% personal. Optics, she repeated. And independence. The investors want to see Daniel married to someone who can help shoulder the load, someone with credentials that signal... Signal what? I asked. Breeding? Professionalism, she said, almost bored with the effort of language. Polish. Obviously you have other strengths. She let her eyes drift, taking in my dress like it was a thrift score. But we all know where you came from. Say it, I said. Go ahead. She patted my arm, a parody of maternal kindness. There is no shame in being a good, small-town girl. A loud voice at the far end of the bar said, Isn't that Morgan Hale? Another voice, closer, said, She's here all the time. They do family dinners once a quarter. A third chimed in. Who's the brunette, girlfriend? A woman answered. No, that's the daughter-in-law. I've never seen her speak at any of their portfolio events. She must not be in the business. Morgan heard it. She pivoted to use the room, because of course she did. We do keep our public roles tight, she said, projecting just enough to be caught by the nearest sets of ears. At product launches, it's important to have the right faces at the podium. Daniel's leadership has been invaluable. He's taking on the Whitman account next quarter. Congrats, a man at a two-top said reflexively, because we're all trained to applaud power. Daniel materialized at Morgan's shoulder like an apology. He didn't look at me. Mom, we should go, he murmured. We will, Morgan said. In a second. I set my glass down carefully. I'm not crashing a dinner, I said to them both. I was invited. By you. Morgan's tilt smile sharpened. Was. Past tense. Plans change. Then uninvite me in the group chat, I said. Like an adult. She stepped half an inch closer, enough that only we could hear. You married into a world you don't understand, she whispered. Take the free champagne when it's offered and be grateful. My mouth tasted metallic. I watched my hand place the lime wedge back on the napkin, perfectly calm, and only then realized I had been gripping it so hard the edges had bruised the skin of my palm. Okay, I said. We're done. Morgan's smile flared. Finally, some sense. Enjoy the bar, Avery. She pivoted on that and walked toward the private room. The cousins trailed like sequin ducklings. Daniel lingered half a beat longer, torn between hearth and herd, then followed his mother without looking back. I exhaled. The bar came up around me again, ice chiming against glass somewhere. The bartender shaking something citrusy. The rain outside insisting on its drumbeat. A guy, 2 stools down, caught my eye, winced like he'd overheard more than he wanted, and lifted his whiskey in an awkward salute. I gave him the barest nod and looked away. My phone buzzed on the bar. Lily Carter, my best friend from college, texting. You survived the Great Hale Gala? A second bubble. Do you need me to drive into the city and kidnap you? I can be there in 40. A third. I have snack. A smile ghosted, then faded. I'm okay, I typed. For now. I stared at the message, then added, I think I need to stay. Lily's typing dots appeared, disappeared, then came back. You sure? Because I can show up in pajamas and embarrass them all with my Target slippers. Tempting, I typed. But not yet. I locked the screen. I'd spent the last year choosing to be underestimated. By Morgan. By Daniel. By people who equated silence with emptiness. It is terrifying and sometimes lonely to let people think you're small while you build something big where they can't see. But there's a point where the mask stops protecting and starts suffocating. I didn't come to New York to be anyone's afterthought. Hey, a woman's voice said. One of the metallic dress cousins stood there now. Brianna, Morgan's niece, the one with the razor-sharp bob. She wore a smile, like lip gloss, pretty and slippery. Sorry about the confusion. Aunt Morgan just gets intense at events, you know. Must be exhausting, I said. Brianna laughed like we were co-conspirators. Anyway, I'm sure it's for the best. Tonight's kind of a serious vibe. Investors, press, that sort of thing. Not really. Domestic. She wiggled her fingers. But you look cute. Where'd you find that dress? J. Crew, I said. They do a sale every 6 weeks. You should sign up for the emails. Her smile froze a millimeter. I will. We'll see you in there? Or not. Either way. She flitted away relieved, already narrating the encounter over her shoulder to the other niece. 2 men at the far end watched me openly now, the way people watch if they paid for a show and got a prelude instead. Another couple speculated in hushed voices. Maybe she's the second wife? No, I think she's the charity one. I tasted that last phrase like a rot on the root. Charity one. The kind of thing that sticks because it fits the shape of an ugly story someone wants to tell. I turned my body away from the room and let my eyes drift over the back bar. Bourbon labels I knew by price point. Tequila bottles like blown glass. This wasn't about a table or a list. This was about a pattern that had finally bloomed too large to ignore. I pictured Morgan in the private room making her opening toast, the wrist flick, the indulgent smile, the line about building legacy that she deployed at every family function like a school fight song. I could hear the polite applause, the expensive laughter. I could see Daniel standing just to her right, angled toward her like a moon to a planet, the good son who never asked what gravity cost. My phone lay on the bar, black slab, a tool, and a doorway. My reflection haunted its glass like a second chance. There was a route through this that didn't require me to throw a scene. There was a route that used the room the way Morgan used the room, calmly, precisely, on purpose. Another club soda? Julia asked, materializing like kindness. Actually, I said, could I speak with your general manager? Her eyebrows rose a fraction. Is everything okay? It will be, I said. And you're not in trouble. Okay. She relaxed again. That's Mr. Alvarez, the floor manager. One sec, I'll grab him. While she went to find him, I unlocked my phone. A folder of contacts filled the screen names I rarely needed, numbers I kept like candles in a drawer. Not for this city, for other rooms, for the life Morgan didn't factor into her calculus because she'd never been curious enough to ask. My thumb hovered over a name I hadn't touched in years, and something like a current ran up my arm. I looked up, scanning the room. The rain had deepened into a steady hiss. Taxis flung up arcs of water at the curb. Inside, Archer and Vine glittered under its constellation of pendant lights. The private dining room door stood half open across the floor. I could glimpse white linen, gold flatware, too many glasses to drink with, and a floral centerpiece constructed to be photographed. Optics. Fine. I knew optics. Miss Lane? A man in a navy blazer approached with Julia beside him. Marco Alvarez, the restaurant's floor manager, had the polite expression of someone ready to field any complaint from a wobbly chair to an existential crisis. How can I help? Thanks for coming over, I said. I wanted to let you know Julia's been lovely. This situation isn't on your staff. Marco nodded, listening. I'm here for the Hale private event, I said. I was invited in writing. I'm also aware the host is now retooling her guest list, last minute. I won't ask you to override a private booking. Appreciated, Marco said. But I do need you to know there's some public disparagement happening on your floor. I kept my tone even. It reflects on the restaurant as much as it does on the host, and I'd like to avoid a scene. Marco's eyes flicked, taking a quick litmus of the room, then returned to me. I see. Thank you for bringing it to my attention. He meant it. It made my shoulders loosen another millimeter. If there's anything I can personally do to make your evening more comfortable, I will, he added. There might be, I said. Marco waited. I glanced down at my phone, at the name in my contacts. The past is not a weapon you throw. It's a door you open with discernment. I could feel Morgan's narrative trying to congeal in the room like icing left too long in a bowl. I wasn't going to taste it. Give me 5 minutes, I said to Marco. I may have someone I can call who can clarify a few things. Of course, he said. I'll be right over there. He indicated a spot by the host stand, and Miss Lane Julia is correct. None of this is on you. Thank you, I said, meaning the words more than I expected. He moved away. Julia offered me a small, secret smile, then turned to greet a new party. I set my club soda down, wiped my palm on the cocktail napkin. My hand didn't shake now. It knew the job it had to do. I opened the contact again. Ethan Bennett, my former professor from years ago, now the owner of Archer and Vine, stared up from the screen in a thumbnail photo taken at some alumni event, his hair grayer, his eyes still kind. I hesitated, just long enough to respect the moment. Morgan didn't know about him. She didn't know about any of it. She didn't care to. That wasn't my fault, but what I did with that ignorance, that was on me. Across the room, the private dining room door widened as a server slipped through. I caught a sliver of Morgan raising a flute, already mid-anecdote, laughter at her command. Daniel laughed too, a half-second later, as if his timing had been installed by someone else. I thumbed the green button. The phone lifted to my ear. It rang once, then twice, and the city held its breath. Hello? A warm baritone answered on the third ring. This is Ethan. Hi, Professor Bennett. I caught myself. Ethan, it's Avery Lane. A beat, then a smile I could hear. Avery. My star who rewrote my operations syllabus with her margin notes. Are you in New York? I'm in your dining room, I said, my voice steady by force. Archer and Vine, there's a situation. I'm coming out, he said. Don't move. The line clicked off. I lowered the phone and found my pulse in the base of my throat. The bartender drifted close like he wasn't listening but definitely was. I gave him the smallest nod. I'm good, he nodded back. Say the word. A minute later the back hallway parted, and Ethan Bennett, the owner here, once my supply chain professor, stepped into the room. He'd gone silver at the temples, jacket open over a white shirt, sleeves rolled 3 turns like work wasn't beneath him. He scanned the floor, found me, and something in his face softened. Avery, he said, crossing the distance like people do when they're sure. He didn't hesitate at the cluster of eyes. He put a hand to the back of my shoulder, grounding, not claiming. How long has it been? Too long, I said. Relief is a strange muscle. You don't know it's knotted until it lets go. He glanced at Julia and Marco with a quick nod that said, I've got it. To me, walk me through it. The Hale family has the private room, I said. My mother-in-law decided I'm not on the guest list anymore. She's making it public. Ethan's mouth flattened. Public we don't do. He slid a look across the room, the fast, practiced red of a man who knows which fires to smother and which to starve. Do you want to join the party? Or do you want a table that's yours? I want the part where I'm treated like a person, I said. Great, he said. We can start there. He gestured for me to come with him. Marco drifted parallel, quiet back up. We crossed the main floor toward the private room while conversation bent around us like tall grass in a wind. At the doorway, a server slipped out carrying a tray of amuse-bouches. Beyond, I could see the long table, linen like a clean page, gold-rimmed plates, the ridiculous floral skyscraper, and at the head, Morgan with a champagne flute lifted at a flattering angle, her audience laughing on cue. Mrs. Hale, Ethan said, voice easy, projection honed over 1,000 nights. Welcome back to Archer and Vine. Morgan pivoted, delighted to be addressed by the man in charge. Mr. Bennett, she said, extending her hand as if this were a photo op. Lovely to see you. You've outdone yourself. The caviar exquisite. Thank you, Ethan said, taking the handshake like it belonged to a human being, not an invoice. I'm glad you're enjoying the evening. We do have one housekeeping item. Morgan's smile held. Of course, we prepaid the full VIP package and added 3 additional tastings. If you need a card on file for incidentals. Not that, Ethan said. It's about your guest. She blinked like the word confused her. Which guest? Avery, Ethan said. And then, because clarity is a kindness, Avery Lane. She's in the party. Morgan's eyes finally swung to me, then back to him. She is not. Ethan didn't change expression. She was invited in writing. This isn't about logistics, Mrs. Hale. It's about respect on my floor. I won't have a guest publicly disparaged in my house. Daniel shifted 2 seats down, napkin whirring between his fingers. He opened his mouth, closed it, then cut his glance at his mother the way he always did when he needed permission to breathe. Morgan's smile cooled by 10 degrees. Mr. Bennett, I appreciate your commitment to hospitality, but this is a private event. We made specific arrangements to maintain the integrity of the table. You paid for food and space, Ethan said, still even. You did not pay for my staff to be instruments of exclusion. If a guest is humiliated within earshot of my bar, that becomes my business. A murmur lifted from the foyer behind us, people half pretending not to listen, fully listening. Brianna peeked around a cousin's shoulder, eyes bright with the thrill of proximity to conflict. This is awkward, she whispered, not nearly quietly enough. Morgan's gaze sharpened on Ethan, assessing the shape of his resistance. She shifted tactics with the ease of someone who's bought her way out of every hard conversation. Mr. Bennett, I'm sure your staff has worked very hard tonight, she said, crisp as a crisp 100. We all respect labor, but we are not going to change our seating for someone who, she let her eyes flick to me, slow and dismissive, prefers a domestic role. This evening is a celebration of leadership. Daniel is about to step into mine. Optics matter. Ethan took that in. His jaw moved once, subtle. Our industry is built by people who work, he said. Every role at every station. I'm not interested in ranking humanity by title. Then perhaps this restaurant isn't the right fit for Horizon West's future events, Morgan said, gentle as a guillotine. Ethan smiled with his eyes, not his mouth. Perhaps not, he said. But for tonight, while you are here, we will do things our way. And our way does not include embarrassing people to prove you can. Her lips went white at the edges. I placed a significant deposit, she said. We selected the Dom. We purchased the Margot. We requested the black truffle risotto. You will not tell me how to host my family on a night I am paying for. I'm not telling you how to host, Ethan said. I'm telling you how to behave. A hush rippled. The server at my elbow, noticing, lowered his tray an inch, eyes wide. Somewhere behind us, glass touched glass, the faintest bell. How dare you, Morgan said, and it wasn't a question. I dare easily, Ethan said, voice still soft. Archer and Vine is my house. Avery is my guest. Morgan laughed then, a bright, brittle thing. Your guest? You know her? Ethan looked at me, then back. She is an old student, he said. A very good one. And she will be treated with the respect she has earned, whether or not you understand how she earned it. There it was, the turn in the air when the wind shifts, and you only notice because the trees complain. Eyes slid from Morgan to me with fresh curiosity. The 2 men at the far end who'd been play-by-playing now whispered with an entirely different energy. Who is she? Morgan recovered with impressive speed. "Mr. Bennett, let me be clear," she said. "You will not seat her with us." Ethan didn't blink. "I won't," he agreed. "I'm going to seat her better." Behind me, Julia made a sound like a swallowed laugh. Marco's mouth did the ghost of a grin, and then remembered it was on duty. "Excuse me?" Morgan said. "Julia," Ethan said without taking his eyes off Morgan, "please hold the chef's table for Miss Lane. Send out the tasting progression from course 2, and ask Tom to do the agnolotti with a little extra sage brown butter. She likes it that way." He finally looked at me. "Unless your taste has changed?" "It hasn't," I said, heat pricking my eyes in a way that had nothing to do with humiliation this time. "And send a glass of the Margot," he added, "from the house." Morgan emitted a soft, disbelieving sound that could cut skin. "You will not comp anything in my presence while I'm paying full freight." "You're not paying for her table," Ethan said mildly. She stared at him the way people stare at locked doors they believe should open because they exist. Then she turned to Daniel. "Say something." Daniel's Adam's apple jumped. "Mom, maybe we could—" "Say something useful," she cut in. The silence that followed was complete, in the way of a held breath. Daniel dropped his gaze to his napkin again, twisting it, until it surrendered. I caught his eye anyway. "Daniel," I said, voice low. He flinched. "Avery, please," he murmured. "Let's not escalate." Ethan shifted half a step closer, quiet ballast. "Miss Lane," he said to me, "would you like a minute? Or shall we walk to your table?" "I'll walk," I said. And then, because the room already had us, I lifted my chin and turned to Morgan. "Enjoy your brand dinner," I said. "You've made a point, everybody saw it." "If you had any sense," she said, "you'd be grateful I'm protecting the image your husband needs to inherit what his grandfather built." "I didn't marry an image," I said. "I married a man." "Did you?" Morgan asked, something shark-like under the sugar. "He seems content to let you homeschool humility at the bar." The cousins Brianna and the other one, Jade, made the kind of faces people make when they smell fire and want a story out of it. Two uninvited observers near the doorway started a new whisper thread. "So she does know the owner," he said, old student. "Maybe she did PR for him." "We're done," I said to Morgan. To the room, to the version of me who stood small so she could be less threatened. Ethan tipped his head toward the main floor. I followed, conscious of all the eyes like porch lights. When we reached the edge of the bar, he slowed, letting the noise wrap us again before he spoke. "I'm sorry," he said. "You shouldn't have had to call me." "I'm not sorry," I said. "I would have eventually anyway." "Good," he said, and the word landed like approval, not absolution. "Chef's table it is. And for what it's worth, what she said about labor?" He shook his head. "There's nothing more elegant than a person who does their work." We reached the open kitchen, gleaming and loud in the best way. Heat rose fragrant with butter and citrus zest. Pans hissed like satisfied cats. The chef de cuisine, Tom, looked up from a pan and grinned. "Boss," he called over the sizzle. "We feeding royalty?" "Something like that," Ethan said. "To me." "Sit. Let us take care of you." A stool appeared as if conjured. A linen napkin unfolded itself onto my lap. Julia's doing again, graceful and matter of fact. She set down the Margot. Then, with a conspiratorial tilt, "On the house," she whispered, and disappeared. Ethan rested his hands on the back of the next stool. "Now," he said, "you want me to keep an eye on the other room?" "I don't want anyone spit-polishing their souls for me," I said. "But if she keeps performing, you might want to stop the show." "Consider it handled," he said. He started to pivot away, then stopped. "Avery." "Yes?" "Your name stayed in my contacts," he said, voice low enough that only I got it. "Not because you were a good student, because you're a good person under pressure, and because you think 3 moves ahead." His mouth twitched. "If tonight needs moves, you've got them." He left me with that, and a widening feeling in my chest that wasn't rage. It was the opposite. Tom slid a plate in front of me, pillows of agnolotti glistening under a veil of parmesan, sage crisped into tiny emeralds. "Heard you like it this way," he said. "I do," I said, and took a bite. Butter, nutmeg, the ache and comfort of something made right. To my left, a couple at the end of the pass pretended not to look. The woman leaned in. "For what it's worth," she said, "that lady in white is a menace." I smiled, noted. We ate the next minute me, the agnolotti, the kitchen, the clock. Margot ribboned warmth down my throat. I held on to that and the solid edge of the counter. Then Morgan's voice found me even here clear as a bell over a room that wanted to be impressed. She'd left the private room door open on purpose, public by design. Some people don't understand what it takes, she was saying, laughter under her words like a stage cue. They think a little cooking qualifies as contribution. Meanwhile, Daniel is steering a multi-million-dollar portfolio. He's up at 5, calls across time zones. The difference between a partner and a homemaker speaks for itself. The edges of Tom's mouth went tight. Ethan appeared at my shoulder as if summoned by frequency. "I'll close that door," he said. "Leave it," I said, surprising myself. "If she wants an audience, let them hear the whole show." A couple more voices rose near the bar, less kind, more curious. If she were actually successful, we'd have seen her on the stage at their launch last month. Exactly. You don't hide a powerhouse. I set down my fork. I wasn't shaking anymore. I was tired in that deep, honest way you get after tearing out a splinter you've lived with too long. Ethan touched the counter once. "Do you want me to walk you out?" he asked. "We could set you up next door, if you'd rather avoid." "I'm not running," I said. Tom swore softly at a pan that hissed too high. "Sorry," he said, recovering the sauce like a save in overtime. He slid me a small plate of citrus salad like an intermission. I forked a blood orange segment. Tasted light. The private room buzzed again. Jade's voice, loud with practiced obliviousness. "Aunt Morgan, are we doing the slideshow now?" Laughter, clapping. Then Daniel's voice, smaller than I'd ever heard it. "Mom, maybe." "Don't," she said, and her command was a leash. My phone buzzed. Lily again. "Still okay? Do I need to bring bail money?" A second bubble. "Kidding. Mostly." "I'm okay," I typed. "I've got backup." I set the phone down, screen face up. The contact list still sat open behind my messages. The names that belonged to the part of my life Morgan refused to imagine. The kitchen moved around me in competent choreography. The dining room hummed like a hive that thought it owned sweetness. And then the second shift began. The one inside me. There's a point where endurance stops being noble and starts being complicity. A point where keeping your head down is the exact thing that helps someone else keep you there. I had stepped up to that line and stared at it long enough. Ethan reappeared, quiet. "She's moved on to Daniel's inevitable succession," he said. "If she starts naming numbers, I'm closing the door." "Let her," I said. "Let her hang portraits in a house that isn't hers." He looked at me like he was making a note. "Okay." I stood, napkin falling to my chair. "Walk with me?" I asked. He did. We took the long way past the raw bar, around a column, toward the private room where the door still yawned open like a mouth that intended to bite. At the threshold, Morgan's back was to us, her hair a smooth, glossy argument. The table glowed. The Margot caught light like rubies. The slideshow behind her showed the Hale logo pulsing between photos of charity galas and ribbon cuttings, Daniel shaking hands with men who looked like him. "And that's why Daniel will be the perfect steward of what we've built," Morgan said. "Because he isn't distracted. He understands sacrifice. He chose a partner who knows her place." The word landed like a slap I didn't give her the satisfaction of seeing. Ethan stepped forward one pace. "Mrs. Hale," he said, not loud, not soft. The door, she turned, lips forming the O of annoyance. "What O?" "Fine." But she didn't reach for it. She reached for me. "Avery," she said brightly, voice pitched to Carrie. "How nice of you to wait in the kitchen while we handle the real work." A couple of guests snorted. I stepped into the doorway and stopped where everyone could see me without my being in the room. "The kitchen is where the real work happens," I said. "You should try it sometime." Her smile edged into serrated. "Don't be vulgar. We host here." "I noticed," I said. Ethan laid a palm lightly against the door. "Ready." Morgan lifted her flute like a conductor calling brass. "Let me explain something, since no one else will. There are producers and there are consumers. Builders and dependents. Leaders and help. Daniel leads. You," she skimmed me again, "help, which is why you will not sit at this table. Optics matter." "Say optics one more time," I said. "Maybe it'll become a personality." A ripple of involuntary laughter skittered from the far end. Morgan's eyes cut that way and back like blades. "Mrs. Hale," Ethan said, more steel now. "The door." She ignored him. "You want independence, Avery? Start by not living off my son. Start by earning your place next to him instead of ironing his shirts." The room did that thing where cruelty turns oxygen thin. My face went cold. My hands were so steady I could have carried 3 cappuccinos. Behind me, I felt Ethan's posture change. the readiness of a man about to step between. Don't, I said to him softly, and to myself even softer. Enough. I took a step forward. You want to talk about earning? I asked Morgan. Let's talk about supply. Her head tilted, amused. Oh, sweet girl, please don't embarrass yourself. Okay, I said. Consider this a courtesy heads up for your caterer. When you write your next check for microgreens, baby carrots, heritage beef, make sure you spell Blue Prairie Organics correctly. It'd be a shame to delay deliveries because you misspelled the name of the farm that supplies half the 5-star restaurants on this side of the country. A silence fell that wasn't confusion. It was calculation. Eyes hopped between my face and Ethan's. Ethan's mouth did a small, surprised curve, like a puzzle snapping into its spot. Morgan laughed, genuinely baffled. What on earth are you babbling about? I met Ethan's eyes, and he gave the teeniest nod, the kind you give when you can confirm without showboating. We've worked with Blue Prairie for 6 years, he said to the table at large. Their winter citrus saves us every January. Their greens are why our spring menu photographs like a painting. A man in a sport coat leaned toward his date. BP's valuation cleared $2 billion last quarter, he whispered. Because numbers are a love language in rooms like this. Morgan's gaze flicked between Ethan and me, trying to find the seam. How quaint, she said finally. You toured a farm once. City people love that. My last name, I said evenly, is Lane because I kept it. My birth name. The L in BP's founding partners is Lane. My father and brother run it day to day. I grew up in a field, not a gala. You've eaten what we grow more times than you can count. Across the table, one of Horizon West's junior partners made a small sound. The woman beside him whispered, You're kidding, and he shook his head without realizing it. Morgan stared, then produced the brittle smile she uses to sell through bad news. Please, she said. You think you can waltz in here and shout a brand name and what become interesting? Anyone can Google a farm. You didn't, I said. She flushed, quick and ugly. This is a stunt, she decided. You always were, theatrical. She looked to Daniel for partnership like a reflex. Tell her to stop. Daniel's mouth opened, closed. Mom, tell her she's not getting a dime when this ends, Morgan said, voice sharpening to a point. Tell her that if you divorce, she leaves with what she brought in, which is nothing. A low rumble slid through the room, some discomfort, some appetite for blood. The cousins watched like a series renewal depended on it. I looked at Daniel because there are moments when you see the man you married or the absence of him, and both deserve to be seen. Daniel, I said. He swallowed. Let's not do this here, he said. Here is exactly where you always don't do it, I said, and then nowhere else. Ethan's hand pressed a little firmer against the door, a boundary ready to become a barrier. My phone vibrated in my palm lily again. Probably, but I didn't look. Morgan's smile returned, all venom and sugar. There, she said, gesturing toward Daniel with a flourish. Leadership. He understands timing. He knows not to air the family laundry where the help can hear. Mrs. Hale, Ethan said, the patient's at the end of its leash. We're closing the door. Go ahead, she said sweetly. Shut out the noise. We have a toast to make. Ethan swung the door an inch, then paused, looking to me. I gave him a nod. He pushed until the latch kissed. A murmur broke around us in the main room, people pretending to go back to their duck, their oysters, their lives. The pressure rose in my ears like we'd changed altitude. Tom caught my eye from the pass. He didn't smile. He just lifted his chin. You good? I'm good, I mouthed. Ethan exhaled. You didn't owe them that, he said. I didn't do it for them, I said. We stood there a second in the pool of the private room's leftover brightness. Then the door jerked back open from the inside with a bang like impatience. A man in a midnight suit stepped into the gap, silver tie pin flashing Arthur Wells, one of Horizon West's senior partners. He looked from Ethan to me to Morgan like he'd walked into a second act without a program. Everything all right here? He asked too loudly, which is how men ask when they want it to be. We're fine, Morgan said, smoothing the air with her palm. We were just explaining boundaries. Great, Arthur said, already halfway back into the room. Slides in too. The door swung shut again. Ethan angled toward the kitchen. Come on, he said. Let's take you back to the good part of the building. I should have gone. I should have sat down at the chef's table and let the food and sane people fix what could be fixed about the night. But there's a point in a story where the character either becomes herself or stays a prop, and I was tired of being set dressing in Morgan's production. I turned to Ethan. "One more pass by the bar," I said. "Then I'll sit." He matched my pace. As we rounded the column, the lobby caught a gust of outside air rain, asphalt, cold iron. The front doors swung, and in slipped a tall man shrugging off a raincoat, a woman with him shaking droplets from a black umbrella. He had the posture of someone used to walking into rooms that reoriented around his presence. He stopped short when he saw Morgan through the glass of the private room. He lifted a hand, palm out. "Morgan," he called across the lobby, voice as rich as a cello. "There you are." Ethan's head turned, interest catching. The hostess stand rustled with attention. The nearest tables went silent. "Who's that?" Julia murmured, not really asking. I knew the name before anyone said it, the name that always made Morgan stand a little taller, laugh a little brighter, sell a little harder. Colin Everett, Horizon West's longest-standing partner and Morgan's favorite prized client. The man with the daughter Morgan once joked would look perfect beside Daniel in a Christmas card. I felt the click of a new gear engaging. Ethan's eyes met mine, reading the room the way I was reading it. "Looks like your night just got interesting," he said. And behind the glass, Morgan lifted her champagne like a prayer and smiled big enough to show teeth. Colin Everett moved through the lobby like he owned the patent on walking into a room. His raincoat hung open over a charcoal suit that looked tailored to an opinion. The woman beside him, Amelia Everett, his 20-something daughter with a sleek ponytail and the smile of someone used to being photographed, fell into step half a pace behind, letting him command the sightline. "Colin," Morgan purred from the head of the table. Even through the glass, you could hear the warmth she saved for people she wanted. What a surprise. She rose, a graceful unfurling, champagne flute still in hand. Come in. We have a seat for you." Colin's gaze swept the private room, clocking faces, calculating hierarchies. Then his eyes landed on me in the main dining space. Recognition flared, quick and sharp. "Avery?" His voice carried easily, warm and pleased. "I didn't know you were in town." I stood before I thought about it. "Evening, Colin." My tone matched his polished, neutral, professional. Morgan's head snapped toward me, confusion cutting through her performance for a fraction of a second before she recovered. "You know each other?" she asked, faux light, but the question had teeth. "We do," Colin said. He stepped away from the open door, closing the gap between us. Amelia followed, curious now. "We've crossed paths on a few accounts." "A few big ones," I said, letting the words land where they would. Ethan had sidled just out of the conversational frame but close enough to witness. I could feel his attention like a steadying hand on my back. Morgan laughed. "A sound too high. Small world." "Not that small," Colin replied. He gave me a quick, assessing smile. "I heard Blue Prairie Organics locked in a new distribution contract last quarter. That's you, isn't it?" "That's my family," I said. "I handle the corporate partnerships." Daniel's voice cut in from the doorway. Tentative. "Avery." But Morgan was already moving, seizing the conversational wheel. "Colin, let's sit," she urged, gesturing back toward the private room. "We can catch up inside." "I'd rather talk here," Colin interrupted. He glanced around the main floor, at the warm lighting, the low hum of conversation. More space, less echo. "That landed like a dropped fork," Morgan's smile pinched. "Of course, but we were just about to present." "I won't keep you long," Colin said. "I just wanted to find you before the week gets away from us." He turned to me again. "And maybe pick Avery's brain, if she has a minute." "I've been meaning to reach out." Morgan's fingers tightened on the stem of her glass. "About what?" "A joint venture," Colin said simply. I kept my expression mild, though my pulse ticked faster. This was a game I knew how to play. "We can set up a meeting," I offered. "Or," Colin said, "we can talk now." He looked past me to Ethan. "Mr. Bennett, is there a table free?" "Chef's table," Ethan said, without missing a beat. "Already in play." "Perfect." Colin smiled. "Morgan, join us. I think you'll find the discussion relevant." For the first time all evening, Morgan didn't have a ready script. She looked from Colin to me, trying to read a subtext she didn't have the dictionary for. "Daniel, come with me," she said finally, as if that kept the ground steady under her heels. We walked Colin and Amelia at the front, me just behind, Morgan and Daniel trailing like reluctant shadows. Back at the chef's table, Tom glanced up, eyebrows raised at the expanding party. Ethan gestured subtly. "Roll with it." Colin claimed the stool beside me. "I was actually planning to call you next week," he said. We're reviewing suppliers for the new Horizon West Hospitality Division. Blue Prairie's on the shortlist. I could feel Morgan stiffen 2 seats away. Hospitality Division? She repeated, a little too sharp. Colin nodded. Easy. Boutique hotels, upscale dining. We need reliable, high-end product year-round. Avery, I saw what you did with the Pacific Grove rollout. Seamless integration, 0 supply hiccups. That's rare. That was a team effort, I said, but I didn't mind the compliment landing where she could hear it. I want that expertise on this, Colin said, directly. We can structure the contract however makes sense for you. Morgan's laugh was brittle. Colin, Horizon West already has in-house logistics for that sort of thing. And they're good, Colin said smoothly. But Blue Prairie is better, and it doesn't hurt that their corporate liaison understands both sides of the supply chain. He glanced at me, then added, almost idly, you'd be point of contact, of course. That was the first crack in Morgan's mask tonight. The faint, stunned delay before she spoke. Point of contact? Colin looked at her like it was self-evident. She's the one with the track record. Amelia spoke for the first time, her voice low but carrying. We saw the case study for that Michelin group launch. The yield forecasting alone was genius. Morgan's gaze flicked between Amelia and me, like she was watching a conversation in a language she didn't speak. Avery doesn't work, she began. Not for you, I said, turning to her. But yes, I do work. Colin tapped the counter lightly. I should tell you, Morgan. I came tonight planning to finalize a renewal with Horizon West on the Whitman account, but seeing how things are shaping up. He trailed off, letting implication do the heavy lifting. Morgan's color rose a notch. Colin, I have to think about who I want representing my brand, Colin said, voice still pleasant. And frankly, public disrespect toward a potential partner isn't a great look. Ethan stayed silent, letting the moment breathe. Tom busied himself plating something aromatic with rosemary, but his ears were tilted our way. Morgan tried for control. If there's been a misunderstanding. There has, Colin said. And I think it's mine for assuming your family dynamics wouldn't spill into professional spaces. Daniel cleared his throat, but the sound was small against the weight in Colin's tone. Maybe we could... I'm moving the Whitman contract, Colin said, to Blue Prairie, effective immediately. The room behind us caught the shift, some guests craning discreetly, others whispering. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. Morgan sat very still. That contract is worth... A lot, Colin finished for her. I know, which is why I'm giving it to someone I trust to handle it. Daniel looked at me then, really looked, as if the shape of the evening had finally come into focus. His mouth opened, but Morgan's glare cut him off before sound formed. Ethan stepped in then, voice calm. Shall I have dessert sent over, or will you be taking this conversation elsewhere? Colin smiled. Elsewhere, I think. Avery, can you meet at my office Monday morning? Absolutely, I said. He rose, offering his hand. I took it. Morgan didn't. Amelia gave me a small, knowing nod before following her father out into the rain-scented lobby. Morgan exhaled sharply once they were gone, then turned to Daniel. Do you see what she's doing? Yes, I said before he could answer. Succeeding. Her voice dropped to a low, dangerous register. This isn't over. You're right, I said. It's not. There's more you don't know. Ethan's eyes flicked to me, an unspoken, this is your moment. I straightened, meeting Morgan's stare head-on. You think Daniel built those partnerships you brag about? Every major deal in the last 2 years, the proposals, the cost analyses, the timelines, they came from me. He took them into the room and read the notes I wrote. Daniel's jaw tightened. Avery. You wanted him to look like an heir, I continued, so I made sure he could pass for one. By day I cooked your dinners. By night I built the deals that kept your investors happy. Tom let out a low whistle before catching himself. Morgan's face was stone, but her hand gripped the counter hard enough to blanch her knuckles. If you think that earns you a place, I don't want a place, I said. I want my due, and I've already started collecting it. That's where part 3 ends, with Morgan blinking, the first flicker of unease settling in, and the kitchen air thick with the scent of something about to boil over. Morgan's laugh was knife-thin. Collecting, Avery? From what? My son's patience? I turned on my stool to face her fully. From years of doing the work you pretended didn't exist. Daniel worried the edge of his napkin again, twisting it until the linen lost its shape. Can we take this offline? He asked, voice papery. Please. We are not in a boardroom, Morgan said without looking at him. We are in public, which means optics matter. She aimed the words at me like birdshot. You could have stayed at the bar and spared us the spectacle. You could have kept your voice down and spared yourself, I said. A soft, involuntary oof came from behind me. Tom, the chef de cuisine, pretended to be deeply interested in a pan of blistering shishitos. Julia, the maitre d' hovered just out of frame with the self-control of a saint. Ethan stood to my right, quiet ballast. Morgan's gaze raked me head to heel, cataloging perceived deficits. You don't get to saunter in here and try on competence like a rented dress, she said. You lack credentials, you lack pedigree, and you lack the basic self-awareness to know when to sit down and let the adults handle business. I felt my mouth go calm, the way the ocean looks before it pulls you off your feet. You keep confusing volume with authority, I said. It's not the same thing. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Sweetheart, authority is what you can afford. And respect, Ethan said mildly, is what you practice. Morgan flicked him a look that would have warped metal. Mr. Bennett, you are dangerously close to losing a very loyal client. Then perhaps we should both behave like we plan to keep each other, he said, not moving an inch. Voices rose and fell around us, the restaurant's pulse speeding up as word of the theater spread. Brianna and Jade, Morgan's nieces, held their phones face down but angled perfectly, as if proximity would catch status by osmosis. At the host stand, a couple whispered, I think that's the Horizon West lady, and who's the brunette? The wife? The problem? Morgan turned to Daniel, eyes bright with the polished heat she saved for leverage. Tell her right now, she said, low and lethal. Tell her when you divorce, she walks with nothing, not a dime. No spousal support, no stake. She contributed nothing of value to Horizon West. She is not getting paid for dinners and errands. Danielle winced. Mom? I stood, napkin falling in a white flag that wasn't. You want to talk contribution? I asked. Let's. Morgan's laugh broke, brittle. Please, enlighten us. Whitman, I said. The projections you brag about? I built those. I modeled 3 price sensitivity curves and a risk matrix for regional volatility. The executive summary that landed the first meeting? I wrote it. Daniel brought the deck in. He did well in the room. He always does. He has a gift for repeating what's in front of him. Daniel flushed a painful red. Avery? Cresswell Logistics, I continued, because stopping halfway is how you get rewritten. Your miracle renegotiation? I pulled the freight index data, drafted the give-gets, and wrote the fallback positions. The emails came from Daniel's account because it was easier for you to sell his face than my work. Venture nights? I ghosted the speeches you reposted on LinkedIn. You were in Napa when your father needed the midnight dose. I was on the phone with insurance. Don't speak to me about value. A sound moved through the nearby tables. Shock, recognition, something like a collective flinch. Even Brianna's mouth parted. Morgan blinked, just once, and then the mask slid back on. All wives do errands, she said. Some are simply better at filling the calendar with them. Ethan's head tipped an inch. Mrs. Hale? She raised her palm at him, a traffic cop for reality. And even if what you're implying were true, she said to me, voice now silken, you were not an employee. You were a wife. You were helping your husband. That doesn't entitle you to anything. That's called being married. Being married is supposed to be partnership, I said. Not free labor you erase from the minutes. Strong women, Morgan said. And she made the word sound like a diagnosis. Make peace with the fact that some work is invisible. Strong women, I said. Stop letting other people hide behind them. Across the room, the doors whooshed, letting in a breath of wet city and a familiar silhouette. Colin Everett reappeared with Amelia at his shoulder, rain still freckling his shoulders from a quick step outside. He beelined to us like he'd changed his mind mid-sidewalk. Apologies, he said, smooth in public. One more thing before I go. Morgan's relief flashed and died in the same second. Yes, she said, the syllable pitched like hope against a wall. Colin faced the room as much as he faced us, the way people do when they understand stage and stakes. I need to put something on the record, he said, for anyone who wonders why Whitman is changing hands. Colin, Morgan warned, porcelain over steel. He ignored it. For the last 2 years, every time Horizon West brought me a plan I could actually use, he said. It came through Daniel, but it sounded like someone else. The language was different. The math was cleaner. The contingencies felt lived in instead of Googled. I asked more than once who wrote those briefs. I never got a straight answer. A live wire crackled under the room. Somebody at the raw bar muttered, "Oh damn." Colin looked at me. Tonight I finally got one. I held his gaze and let the moment expand. He turned back to Morgan. "If I'm moving Whitman, it's not because I'm impulsive. It's because I'm done pretending I don't know where the competence is coming from. Avery, I want to do business with you. Formally." He shifted to include Ethan. "And for what it's worth, I appreciate the way Mr. Bennett runs his house." Amelia's voice carried in that clear, polite way rich kids learn in Choate dining halls. "Also, the midnight delivery schedules, the backup driver routing during the Queensboro closure, that wasn't luck." I smiled a little number. "It wasn't." Morgan didn't move. "You're making a mistake," she said to Colin. "I'm correcting one," he said, "and for the avoidance of doubt, I won't be part of any arrangement that sidelines or humiliates a partner in public. If a family treats its own like that, I have to assume it's a cultural value, and I don't sign with cultures that rot the fruit from the inside." Something genuine flickered behind Morgan's eyes. It looked a lot like fear. Daniel whispered, "Colin, can we discuss this Monday privately?" Colin shook his head. "I just did." He reached into his jacket, produced a slim card case, and slid a card toward me across the chef's pass. "Here," he said. "My direct cell, Monday 9 a.m. We'll finalize. Bring whatever you need." I took the card. "I'll be there." Colin nodded once. "Good night." To Ethan, "Tom's agnolotti is still the best on this side of the Hudson. Tell your friends," Ethan said dryly. Colin and Amelia left with the weather, letting the door whisper closed behind them. For a beat, the room held still around the hole they left. Morgan exhaled through her nose, slow like a dragon deciding whether to burn a village. "Congratulations," she said to me. "You coast my Sona contract." "I moved a contract to the person who wrote it," I said. "You stole it," she said. "I can't steal what was never yours," I said. "Stop acting like Daniel's Racem is a community theater costume you can just staple things to." Daniel's jaw worked. "Avery, please. Say something with a spine," I said quietly, not looking away. He dropped his eyes. "We should go home." "I will," I said. "After I eat." Morgan's laugh was almost a cough. "Of course. On someone else's tab." "On mine," Ethan said, voice pleasant, unarguable. "And on the house's, when I feel like it. Extraordinary service is my brand." Morgan pinned him with a look meant to shrink. It didn't. She pivoted back to me. "I'll say this once," she said. "If you think tonight earns you leverage in my company, you're delusional. You bake casseroles. I build empires." I stepped in, not loud but crisp enough to carry. "You build optics, Morgan. Other people build the work." "Name them," she snapped. "Name one person in this room who has built more than me." I didn't take the bait. I took my phone, unlocked it, and scrolled to an email thread I knew by muscle memory, the one with subject lines like RE, Evergreen Supply, Phase 2 edits and timestamps between 11:47 p.m. and 2:13 a.m. Daniel's name sat at the top of the sent field. The signature was his. The sentences were mine. I turned the screen so she could see 3 lines. "This is your empire," I said, "held together with the unpaid labor of women you call small." She inhaled like a gasp might replenish her power. "You will not blackmail me." I locked the phone. "I don't need to," I said. "I'm just done donating." A murmur rippled at the private room door. Arthur Wells Horizon West senior partner poked his head out again, eyes flitting from Morgan's face to mine to Ethan's. "Are we doing dessert or—" "Do whatever you want, Arthur," Morgan said without looking at him. "Apparently my family dinner is now a town hall." Arthur vanished. I felt something loosen at the base of my skull, the spot where anger lives rent-free when you let it. I glanced at Ethan. He gave me that micro-nod that meant, "Keep the wheel, you're driving fine." Morgan straightened. The diamond cuff on her wrist caught the light like a warning. "Final offer," she said. "You walk back into that private room, you apologize to this family, and you behave yourself for the photographers next quarter. In return, I forget this little tantrum, and you get to keep the only status you're ever likely to have. Mrs. Daniel Hale." Every woman within earshot went very still. The phrase slid under the skin like a splinter. Get to keep. I wasn't sure I was going to laugh until I heard it. Small, honest, sharp. "Morgan," I said, "you keep trying to sell me a chair at a table I built, in a room I paid for, with my own evenings. I'm not bargaining for crumbs I bake." Her mask cracked then, hairline but fatal. "You think you can make it in this city without our name?" "I already do," I said. "You just don't read the credits at the end." Then let me be explicit, she said, voice suddenly colder than the ice in our water glasses. After tonight, you are finished with Horizon West. You will not sit in one more strategy meeting, you will not touch one more deck, you will not taste one more drop of wine purchased by this family. And when Daniel divorces you, and he will, you will not get 1 cent in settlement. Mom, Daniel hissed, humiliated now that the room had fully registered the word divorce. I looked at him. This is the part where you say, you don't speak to my wife like that. He was very quiet. Around us, the restaurant's murmur turned into something like wind through pines. Soft, collective, thinking. A woman in a cream sweater, the one I'd noticed earlier complaining about it is what it is, said under her breath. Girl, leave. Her date nodded, eyes never leaving Morgan. I set my hands on the chef's pass, palms flat, grounding on oak. Here is what's going to happen, I said, and my voice surprised me with how even it was. You're gonna finish your dinner behind your closed door. You're gonna write a very large tip to this staff. You're gonna stop saying my name in public like it's a weakness. Or what? Morgan asked, too fast. There it was, the flinch. Or you're going to find out, I said, how many rooms I'm already in. Threats, she said, but the word didn't find purchase. It's a forecast, I said. I'm good at those. My phone buzzed on the counter, a text banner from Caleb Lane. My brother, Blue Prairie's COO. DocuSign executed, registry updated, clock starts at midnight CT. Proud of you. A second ping stacked right under it from Dad Mark Lane. We're good. Don't let her rattle you. Love you, kiddo. I didn't smile. I let the information settle behind my eyes like a quiet sunrise no one else could see yet. Morgan watched my face. Hunting tells. Who was that? She asked. Family, I said. Figures, she said. Clannish people always hide behind cousins. Or they build with them, I said. Ethan cleared his throat, the sound gentle and decisive. Mrs. Hale, we're going to close your door now, he said. Any further discussion can happen without an audience. Morgan held my gaze, daring me to blink. I didn't. For the first time, she was the one who looked away. Fine, she said. Enjoy your little victory lap. She pivoted on her heel, called over her shoulder. Daniel. Hay didn't move. Daniel, she repeated. The name Alish? He took one step toward her, then stopped. His eyes went to me, pleading and defensive all at once. Avery, can we talk at home? We don't have a home, I said before I could decide to say it. We have a lease with furniture. Something like a laugh-pained, empathetic escaped the cream sweater woman. Tom muttered, damn, to a saucepan. Morgan's mouth thinned. You'll regret this. Maybe, I said, but not tonight. She disappeared into the private room. Diamonds and fury and a scent like winter. The door started to swing shut. Leave it a crack, I said to Ethan. He arched a brow. Let them hear dessert, I said. It'll taste different with the truth in the room. He huffed what? On him. Passed for a laugh. As you wish. He let the door rest, almost closed. A sliver of light and sound leaking through. Julia reappeared with grace under pressure, and set a fresh glass of Margot at my elbow, followed by a plate of halibut over fennel and blood orange. For your strength, she murmured, and was gone before I could thank her. I took a breath and let it go. My hands were steady now. There was work to do, and I knew how to do it. I texted Caleb. Got it. Talk in the morning. He shot back a thumbs up and a photo of our dad in the farm office holding a mug that said, World's okayest, boss. It shouldn't have made my eyes sting, but it did. Daniel lingered in the doorway like weather that couldn't decide. He looked young. The suit couldn't help him tonight. Avery, he said, this isn't you. It's exactly me, I said, not unkind. You just liked me better when I was useful and quiet. He flinched. That's not fair. No, I said, but it's true. He scrubbed a hand over his jaw, indecisive to the bone. If we just reset. If you apologize to my mother. Danny, I said softly, and there was more history in those 2 syllables than in any of Morgan's speeches. The way back is gone. He looked past me to Ethan like a substitute teacher might have a pass. Ethan only shook his head once. Not my line to write. Daniel's voice broke on the next word. Please, I'll send you an address for the rest of your things, I said. You can keep the dresser. I never liked it. He inhaled, exhaled, failed to stake a claim in his own life, and retreated through the crack in the door to the table where his mother had set his place. Ethan watched the door settle and then turned to me. You okay? He asked. I'm hungry, I said. Good, he said. Eat. For a while, I did. Halibut. a whisper of anisette, citrus that tasted like late winter and the promise of something warm. The noise of the restaurant ebbed and flowed around me, forks chiming softly, the bartender knocking ice, the city wearing the rain like perfume. When I looked up, Arthur Wells was back in the gap of the door again, managing a pinched smile. "Quick update," he said to no one and everyone. "We'll be wrapping early this evening." "Translation," Tom murmured from the pass. "Somebody just got a calendar invite from Humility." I snorted into my wine. Ethan gave me the side-eye of a man who enjoyed a line but refused to encourage the comic. Footsteps approached. Brianna and Jade materialized, faux contrite. Brianna's bob swung like punctuation. "Avery," she said. "Syrup thick, we just wanted to say." "No hard feelings?" Jade chimed in. "It's all family at the end of the day." "Exactly," Brianna echoed. "You know how Aunt Morgan gets. Anyway, if you ever want to, borrow a dress for a thing," she flapped a hand, "I have a couple that would be so cute on you." I stared at her. "I own a mirror." Yada blinked. "We didn't mean." "Sure you did," I said. "You just thought I'd thank you for it." Brianna's smile curdled. "You know, we were trying to be nice." "Try being quiet," Tom offered, not looking up. They flounced off, scandalized by the absence of stage time. The night reset around their retreat. Ethan leaned on the back of the empty stool beside me, studying my face like a sommelier studies legs. "You're holding," he said. "I'm done holding," I said. "I'm building." He tipped his chin toward my phone, which still showed my dad's mug. "You have what you need?" "Yes," I said, and the word fit. Through the narrow opening, someone began a toast in the private room. The cadence was missing its usual muscle. The syllables didn't ring. Optical sugar without calories. I lifted my glass to the sliver of light and didn't drink. Not a toast, a marker. Then I set it down, pulled in a breath, and very calmly texted Lily Carter. "Tomorrow morning, lawyer. I'm ready." 3 dots. Then, "Finally, want me there?" "Always," I typed. Across the room, the door to the private dining room opened wider. Morgan emerged again, face paler but set. She pointed a manicured finger at me like she was measuring drapes. "Last chance," she said. "Come mend this before it costs you everything." I turned a fraction, just enough to make sure she didn't mistake this for hesitation. "Morgan," I said, voice even, "you don't have what I want." "What do you want?" "Equity where I build," I said, "respect where I stand, and a table where I don't have to ask permission to sit." Her laugh sounded tired for the first time. "Dreams are cute." "I know," I said. "That's why I made mine legal." For the first time all evening, true uncertainty entered her eyes. Something that looked like someone halfway to a cliff not realizing the next step was air. She opened her mouth, thought better of it, closed the door. The room softened. The kitchen breathed. Ethan slid a small plate toward me, a single square of olive oil cake with macerated berries. "Victory slice?" he asked. "Intermission," I said. He nodded once. "The second act is usually the messy one." "It already was," I said. "The third is where people find out who they are." He tipped an invisible hat, then moved back into his orbit, a man whose house was a stage and a sanctuary both. I forked the cake, sweet and peppery with the oil. The bite melted, leaving citrus and resolve. There are nights when you survive. There are nights when you choose. And there are nights when you stop obeying a script you never wrote. This was the last one. The silence between us thickened like the air before a storm. Ethan didn't move. Not a muscle. Just observing. His hand rested on the back of the stool beside me, a steady anchor as I steeled myself. The space between me and Morgan had grown from familial tension to full-blown Cold War. "I don't need anything from you," I repeated, more to myself than to Morgan. "I don't need your money, your approval, or your place at your table." The words felt like armor, but even as I said them, the weight of everything I'd hidden for so long pressed down on me. Morgan narrowed her eyes, her lips curling into that tight, calculating smile that had always made my skin crawl. "You think you're some kind of power player now, don't you?" Her voice dripped with contempt. "Just because you managed to get Colin on your side tonight doesn't change the fact that you're still nothing without this family. You'll always be second-rate." "No, Morgan," I said, stepping closer, making sure my voice was clear, unwavering. "I'm second-rate because I let you define me for too long. But that stops today." She shot a look at Daniel, who was standing quietly, trying to shrink into the shadows, his shoulders slumped. "Do you hear that?" she asked, as though trying to extract some form of acknowledgement from him. Daniel flinched. but he didn't respond. His silence was worse than any words he could have said. It was an admission of guilt, of cowardice, of everything he hadn't been able to admit to me. And in that moment, I realized something. I had spent years trying to fill a space that was never meant for me. I had bent myself into something I wasn't, to fit the role Morgan wanted me to play in her perfect little world. "You can't keep me here, Morgan," I said steady. "You can't keep me small just because it makes you feel bigger." For the first time that night, I saw something crack in Morgan's facade. Just a fraction. She blinked, her perfectly sculpted exterior faltering for a brief moment before she regained her composure. "What exactly do you think you're going to do now, Avery? You've burned your bridges here. You've embarrassed yourself in front of everyone." "I've stopped asking for permission to exist," I replied, my voice steady, more confident with each passing second. "And that's something you'll never understand." Morgan took a deep breath, her fingers tightening around her wineglass, her knuckles turning white. She looked like she was about to say something sharp, something cutting, but then she stopped, eyes flicking toward the door. Arthur Wells had returned, his presence like a wave of cold air. Behind him, Brianna and Jade hovered, faces painted with faux concern. Arthur gave me a polite nod, but his gaze didn't linger on me. His eyes immediately sought Morgan. "Mrs. Hale," he said smoothly, his voice oozing with the kind of respect that's forged in boardrooms and power lunches. The evening seems to have shifted a bit. Morgan's smile was as thin as ever, but there was a tremor beneath it. "What are you suggesting, Arthur?" she asked, still trying to project control. "I'm suggesting that we proceed with the business portion of the evening," Arthur replied. "The Whitman account, for one. We've been negotiating for months now, and I think it's time to finalize the terms. After all, we're here to work, aren't we?" His words hit Morgan like a slap. She faltered, looking between him and the now empty space where Colin and Amelia had stood only moments ago. "What do you mean by that?" she asked, her voice tight. "The deal's not done yet." Arthur's gaze didn't waver. "It's not just about numbers, Morgan. It's about trust. And tonight, you've shown us that perhaps there's more at play here than we thought." The room was suddenly thick with the weight of those words. Ethan had stepped away, no longer the facilitator but the witness. His eyes were sharp as he watched Morgan's face drain of color. "I'm sorry, Morgan," Arthur continued, "but the Whitman deal will be moving to Blue Prairie. I'll have the formal document sent to your office tomorrow morning." I could see the calculation in Morgan's eyes as she absorbed the weight of that statement. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. She was gasping, trying to find a way to salvage the situation, but the room had already turned on her. Arthur gave me a nod, his eyes lingering on me for a brief second before he turned to Morgan. "Avery's right. The real work isn't about who can shout the loudest or who has the biggest name. It's about the people who do the work, day in and day out. The ones who show up and get things done." He glanced back at Ethan, then at me. "Blue Prairie has done more than simply supply food. They've built partnerships, true partnerships. And we can't ignore that." Morgan looked like she'd been slapped. You can't be serious," she whispered. "I am," Arthur said, nodding to me once more before stepping toward the door. "And I think it's time we all leave. There's nothing left to discuss." As he walked out, I saw Morgan's hands trembling as she gripped the edge of the table, her fingers white from the pressure. The entire room seemed to breathe out at once, the tension unraveling. The weight of the moment was too much for her to hide now. I turned to Daniel. His face was unreadable. "I didn't want this for you," I said quietly. "I never did." He blinked, his voice thick with guilt. "Avery, please." I didn't wait for him to finish. "You never stood up for me, Daniel," I said, my voice shaking now. "Not once. Not even when it mattered. You let her tear me down, and you stood by and watched." "Avery." He started again, but I raised my hand to stop him. "No," I said, shaking my head. "You made your choice, and I made mine." The last thread of emotion snapped in me, and I turned away, walking toward the exit. The door swung open as I reached for it, and I caught one final glimpse of Morgan, her face twisted in disbelief, fury, and fear all wrapped in one. The city outside was a blur of wet streets and lights. I stepped into the night without looking back, feeling the cold air hit my face like a cleansing breeze. Ethan was beside me now, walking in stride without a word. He didn't need to say anything. This was the moment I had been building toward. We didn't need to talk about the victory. We didn't need to talk about the future. It was already in motion. And it was mine. The city hadn't changed, but I felt like it was all fresh air and the weight of something heavy finally being dropped. I stepped through the revolving doors of Archer and Vine, the same doors that just hours ago had seemed like a boundary. Now, they felt like a bridge. I pulled my coat tighter around me, the cool night air offering me a comfort I hadn't realized I'd needed. For once, it wasn't just the city buzzing around me, it was me buzzing with the energy of something brand new. "Are you sure about this?" Ethan's voice came from beside me, low and steady. I nodded without looking at him, but I could feel his gaze like a steady current at my back. I knew he was the kind of man who never asked a question unless he was ready for the answer. "I'm sure," I said, and the words felt stronger than they had an hour ago, than they had a day ago. The old Avery, the one who shrank into the background, the one who never spoke up, never asked for what she deserved, she was gone. The streets glittered under the streetlights, water reflecting everything that had just happened. As I walked, my heels clicked against the pavement, sharp and confident. I was not rushing to the future. I was walking into it. Ethan matched my pace, a silent protector in the quiet night. "You know, you've just done something no one in that room saw coming. Not Morgan, not even Daniel." I let out a breath, slow and deep. "The worst part?" I said, voice barely above a whisper. "They never expected me to do it for myself." "You did it for everyone," he corrected gently. "You did it for you, but you did it in a way that means something to everyone around you." I let that hang in the air for a moment, the weight of it sitting with me like a good weight. He wasn't wrong. I had fought for respect. I'd fought for myself, yes, but more than that, I'd fought to stand in the same room, the same space, as the people who had always tried to keep me out. I glanced up at him, offering a small smile. "I guess the lesson is, never let anyone else define your value." He smiled back, but there was something in his expression I couldn't quite read. "You've always known your value, Avery. It just took you a while to let others see it." The truth of that hit harder than I expected. The years spent shrinking. The years spent looking at the people around me, at Morgan, at Daniel, and thinking I needed to be something I wasn't. Tonight had been the moment I realized that I am enough. That I always had been. The text from Lily buzzed on my phone as we continued walking. "So, what's the plan?" I smiled, feeling something soft in my chest. "I'm about to finish what I started." Then, I added, "And you're coming with me." I sent it before I even realized I was smiling for the first time in ages. Ethan cleared his throat, and I looked over at him, curious. "What's on your mind?" I asked. He was quiet for a moment, his hands in his pockets, his shoulders relaxed. Finally, he looked up at me. "Morgan's not going to stop, you know. She'll keep trying to push you back into the corner she wants you in." I stopped walking, my heart picking up speed as the words landed. "I know," I said, "but I won't be cornered anymore." He looked at me for a long time, then nodded slowly. "You've got that steel in you now." His voice lowered, but there was a note of something softer in it. "You won't need to worry about her anymore." I gave him a half smile. "I don't think it's her I'm worried about." For the first time tonight, Ethan looked truly surprised. "Who then?" "I think I've got a bigger fight coming," I said, my mind already moving ahead, already calculating. "One that starts with Daniel." The next morning, I filed for divorce. Not that there was much left to divide. There was the house, his, and he could keep it. There were the joint accounts already frozen. But more than anything, there was the choice. His or mine. I didn't want his name. I didn't want the brand, or the legacy, or whatever it was that had made me feel like I was failing every time I looked in the mirror. What I wanted was my life built on my terms. I sent Daniel the papers. No fanfare, no speech, no emotion. I was done with playing the part of the woman who kept quiet to keep the peace. I was finished with letting him pretend he had any claim over what I was becoming. I picked up the phone and called Colin Everett's office. "I'm ready," I said, and my voice was steady. "Let's talk about the next step." And that was how my life began again. A week later, the deal with Horizon West officially transferred. Blue Prairie was now the exclusive supplier for their new hospitality division. I would be working directly with Colin on the implementation, bringing my expertise to the table where it belonged, not hidden in the shadows. I could feel the power shift in every conversation, every negotiation. My name was no longer something that made people sneer or dismiss. It was the name they looked for first, the one that had value stamped into every document I touched. That evening, after a full day of meetings and a successful pitch, I sat at the kitchen table with Lily, a bottle of wine between us, and the quiet hum of the apartment around us. She had been my anchor, my voice of reason, the one who'd never doubted me. She raised her glass, a mischievous glint in her eyes. "To you," she said, and the word was weighted, a cheer that held every ounce of pride and love she had for me. "To us," I said, clinking my glass against hers. We sat in silence for a moment, just letting the weight of everything settle. "I think you're going to change the world," she said softly. I looked at her, surprised by the weight of her words. "I don't know about that." "You already have," she said. "You've changed everything for yourself." I smiled, one step at a time. The next week I moved into the penthouse I'd bought with the money I'd quietly acquired from the 50% stake in Horizon West's parent company, which I had secured through a series of well-timed investments in my family's business, Blue Prairie Organics. The legal documents had been in place for months, with everything hidden behind corporate layers. I had done the groundwork years ago without anyone realizing. When I signed the divorce papers, I also signed off on the transfer of assets. I had done all of it without a single word to Daniel or Morgan, and now I was standing in the life I had built for myself. I was no longer anyone's afterthought. Morgan came to my office a few weeks after everything had settled. She stood at the door, framed by the bright city light outside, her expression a mixture of fury and disbelief. "You think you've won," she said, her voice tight. "You think this is it?" I didn't flinch. I had nothing left to prove to her. "This is just the beginning." She hesitated for a moment, her gaze flickering to the papers on my desk, official documents, contracts, plans for the next few months. She saw the work I had put in, the empire I had built from the ground up, and for the first time, there was a flicker of recognition in her eyes. "You're not the woman I thought you were," she said, her voice cracking just slightly. "I underestimated you." "You did," I said, no emotion in my voice. "And you'll continue to, as long as you think I'm still the person you tried to break." Her face hardened again, but this time there was something else in her eyes. "You'll regret this." "I don't think so," I said, standing and meeting her gaze. "But you'll be fine, you always are." And with that, I turned back to my desk, signaling that the conversation was over. The next morning, I woke up to a new life. It wasn't perfect. There were still battles to fight, still work to be done. But for the first time, I felt the freedom of knowing that I was the one who held the reins. I was no longer the woman who lived in the shadows of others. I had stepped into the light, and the world was finally ready to see me.